Welcome to episode 141 of Real Health Radio. You can find the links talked about as part of this episode at the show notes, which is www.7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/141. A couple of times a year, I take on clients, and client work is the core of my business and how I spend the vast majority of my time. And after working with clients for the last decade, I feel confident in saying I'm very good at what I do. And yes, I help clients with various symptoms, but actually it's much bigger than just removing symptoms. These are struggles that these individuals are obsessed with and are defined by. Their problem has become how they identify and think about themselves. My clients have often worked with multiple practitioners and are on the verge of giving up, and it really isn't uncommon for me to be the fourth or the fifth or the sixth person they've come to. And where I see myself being different to others is by combining science and compassion. So I'm evidence-based in what I do and have a strong grounding in physiology and why the body is functioning how it is. But at the same time, I'm compassionate and I listen to the mental and emotional side of the client's experience and know that these aspects are of equal importance to health as the physical side of things. And one of the aspects I like most about the work that I do is how positive the process is. People believe that they're going to have to give up so much, that it will be painful in so many ways, but they'll convince themselves that it's better for their long-term health. But what they find is that the change actually adds to their quality of life. They enjoy the change and their new life. Their physical, mental, and emotional health improves now, not in some distant, far-off time in the future. And after working together, my clients regain what they thought was impossible, having their period again, conceiving, feeling energized, purposeful and alive, and walking by a mirror without the dread of seeing their own reflection. I put out so much free material. The podcast is free, the blog posts are free, and while the free material I put out I stand behind, it is much more general. You have to discern what is and isn't relevant for you. But when we are working together, I'm the one who can sort through this and show you what is important, what is the low-hanging fruit, and what are the levers that will make the most difference. So if you want this kind of precision in helping you with your recovery for better health, now is your chance to work with me. If you're interested in finding out more, you can head over to www.7-health.com/help, so HELP, and there you can read more about how I work with clients and apply for a free initial chat.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Real Health Radio. So a couple times a year, usually coinciding with me taking on clients, I release episodes of this show where I interview past clients. And I've done this many times, and the feedback from these shows are always really positive. And the overarching theme from the comments I get is it's nice to hear that change is possible and to get an insight into the lives of these people, that it can be inspiring, it can be a reality check. But mostly people just appreciate the realness of these kind of conversations and hearing what it takes and what it looks like to actually make changes. So that's what today's show is about. And as part of it, I'm chatting with a past client called Julie. So Julie is actually someone I worked with nearly 5 years ago. So somewhere between 4.5 and 5 years ago. And since finishing up work together, we've continued to keep in contact. We've met up for a coffee at least once. And these days, the tables have been turned, and I'm now getting Julie's advice. She's been helping me with my business. And late last year, when we were chatting, we just decided that it would be really great to get her to come on the show and to chat about where she's at now. And as part of that, to just really demonstrate that this work sticks. So rather than a diet that you go on and then it stops working and then you try another diet and then that stops working and you go into that kind of pattern, the work that we did almost 5 years ago has stuck with Julie, and it continues to impact on her life in positive ways. And as you'll hear her describe, she suffered with poor body image and insecurity from age 5. And this led into dieting. And when we started working together, she was in her early 30s. And so this has been going on for 25 years. And if you hear yourself in Julie's words and experiences, then I'd love to have a chat and see if we could help you make similar changes. And as you will hear, Julie's life is now completely different compared to when we started together. So if you are interested in working together or simply finding out more, you can head over to www.7-health.com/help, so HELP. And there you can read about how I work with clients and apply for a free initial chat. So with this intro out of the way, let's get on with today's show. So here is my conversation with my past client, Julie. Hey, Julie, thanks for chatting with me today.
Sure. Hi, Chris.
So I know it's been about 4.5 years since you first got in contact with me and that we then worked together, but can you remember why you originally reached out?
Yes, I can. So a couple months before I had contacted you, I had moved to London for work, and you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not British, of course. I moved from the U.S. So it was the summertime 4.5 years ago, and I had contacted you because this is a longer story that we can certainly go into. I mean, certainly I had a 25-year history of body image issues and trying to figure out stuff with food, generally speaking. But specifically, at that point in time, I had moved to London to build a new business. And I had been there for, 3 months at that time, probably. And I just felt like I couldn't get a hold of my body. So by that, I mean, I just remember like my sleep was awful. I felt lethargic all the time. I wasn't able to go to the restroom the way I wanted to. And I had started to gain a couple of pounds, which wasn't too abnormal for me, but certainly that was kind of an external physical trigger that I wasn't happy with. But really, something I was really, really concerned about was my career was and is really important to me. And I just felt like it was really starting to impact the quality that I was able to show up with. I mean, certainly in life, but in work too. And that was really the first time I had kind of noticed like my body is feeling like it's restricting me and I'm not able to like perform the way I wanted to perform.
And do you remember how you found me? So you said you'd moved to the UK probably 3 or 4 months prior to that. Was it when you were in the UK that you then found me, or had you been following my blog or something before that?
It was in the UK, and it was specifically through the yoga studio Frame in Shoreditch.
And I mean, you said that this had been a problem that had been ongoing, maybe in different guises and in different sort of levels of struggle for 25 years. So had you worked with other practitioners before me? And if so, how that worked out?
I had never worked with another practitioner, but it's probably worth giving a little bit of context to say, when I say I'd been struggling with it for 25 years, I was 30 at the time that I contacted you. So from a super young age, really self-conscious about my body and literally yo-yo dieting since I was a kid. And so while I had never worked with a dietitian or a practitioner, what I had done many times on and many times off was different versions of dieting. And I remember, as a super young kid, there was someone in my immediate family who also had some body image issues. And so I would go on diets with this person as a kid, as a very young person. But, everything from tracking calories on MyFitnessPal to Weight Watchers for extended period of time to like kind of crazy fad diets. I don't remember what this one was called exactly, but I remember when I was a kid, like something about like, very prescriptive meals, including beets, was like the food that I hated the most, that I had to eat all the time on this diet. And so, yeah, a history of trying stuff, just not working with a practitioner.
And considering it had been quite an ongoing thing, was it a big deal to get in contact with me? How did you feel when you reached out and then we had that initial chat?
I wouldn't say it felt like a big deal, because, well, I felt like I had never really had this area of my life nailed down. I was really big on kind of self-help and soliciting help. And so, I had been to therapy and I really believed in hiring help in different areas of my life. So I was familiar kind of with that as an idea. So it didn't feel like a monumental thing at the time. I would say it's something that when you and I spoke initially during our chat that really impacted me was I could tell that your approach was it's all connected, which is something that I really believed in, from psychology to kind of what you eat to how you blah, blah, blah. I definitely believe that all those things are connected. And when I spoke to you initially, that really came out in the way that you thought about things. So I was excited by that and attracted to that. I would say, kind of moving from the initial consultation to actually starting to work together, while it didn't feel like necessarily a monumental big deal at the time, as we started working together, I don't think I realized, even though I say I believed it's all connected, I don't think I realized what it was actually going to feel like to explore and expose all that stuff. So I remember quite a few, teary episodes with you and talking about things that seemed to have to do nothing with what I was eating, but, starting to really see the big picture of it actually did have to do with what I was eating.
Okay. And so as part of that, do you mean that the work we did was, I don't know, just not as you expected it to be?
I guess so. And I don't know that I had very clear expectations, but yeah, it was probably deeper than I expected it to be.
And can you just describe a bit about the process of us working together? And again, I know it was 4.5 years ago, but from what you can remember.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of angles when you asked me that I think about. One was kind of pretty deep internal stuff, and then another angle was more topical stuff that, again, had to do with the food and the eating, but I didn't understand how connected it was at the time. So as a couple of examples, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to name out the process 1, 2, 3 anymore, but
sure.
I certainly, have memories of a lot of the stuff that we kind of worked through and that came up. And, kind of on that deeper level, I remember us talking a lot and doing a lot of work about perfectionism. And there was a book you had me read about that was really interesting, and perfectionism and childhood and I don't know, uncovering some kind of deep-seated stuff there. I also remember there were a lot of discussions about the relationship that I was in at the time in my personal life, and kind of what the impact that was having on the rest of my life and vice versa. And, on kind of that more topical physical level of things, I remember stuff I would talk to you about how distracted I was when I looked in the mirror. And, probably from your point of view, so obvious and so simple, you were I want you to put that mirror in the closet and not look at it anymore. And that was a total game changer, which, again, I'm sure was obvious from your point of view, but it never would have occurred to me from my point of view. So it was that kind of stuff that was I would call it on the deeper level. And then, of course, there certainly was the layer of looking at the actual food and the science and what was, making different changes and kind of tweaks and testing and learning in my diet to figure out what was going to impact my body and how I was feeling. And the other thing that, seriously changed my life, and we can talk more about this, but in terms of it's all connected. And I feel like one of the biggest gifts you gave me was understanding how much my sleep affected everything. And as I think back on it now, I just understand how this is the underlying linchpin to almost anything performance related, whether it's diet, exercise, what work is going to be like that day, how well I'm connecting in my personal relationships, that kind of work that we did on my sleep was one of the underlying changes that we made that has changed everything for the rest of my life.
Which is funny you say that, because I still, for me personally, sleep is the most important thing that I can do, hands down, for my health, and not just for my physical health, but for my sanity. If I get good sleep, it's amazing the kinds of thoughts that come into my mind and how I think about the world and the perspective I take, versus when I don't get good sleep, how much that just automatically changes. So yeah, it's good to hear that A, resonated with you back then, but B, is something that you've then kept doing even though we're sort of 4 years down the line.
Definitely. And I would even say, at this point, literally this week, last week, I've been thinking about it so much. And, it has stayed with me to the extent of, I feel like something you would say is getting better sleep will help you make better diet choices. But at this point, I am so I understand the effect of good sleep now so much. I'm so intent on getting good sleep that I will now make diet choices in order to get good sleep. So I'll turn away a sweet at night or turn away alcohol. If I know I have a big day coming up the next day, because I understand so clearly how that's going to impact my sleep. Like I said, to this day, that is just, man, that has really stuck.
And so what other changes have you noticed, or did you notice while we were working together? I know you touched on sort of body image stuff, but also physical symptoms, if you want to kind of deal with both of those.
Firstly, I would say, again, I body image and insecurities about that had been on my mind and in my life for 25 years up until working with you. And I just, and I want to be clear and certainly respectful to people who have more serious and more medical conditions. I wouldn't say that I had kind of an extreme medical diagnoses or anything like that, but more of an obsession with just how I looked and what I ate. And I just can't even tell you, it distracted me in every area of my life from the age of 5 years old, whether it was at school or hanging out with my friends and feeling like I couldn't play sports. And then as I grew into the adult world, it was a distraction at work. It just took away from every aspect of my life. And I never imagined a scenario where it wouldn't be a distraction. I just couldn't even comprehend that wouldn't be kind of that nagging, lagging thing in the back of my mind always. I just, I was never able to imagine what it would feel like to feel contented by my body and not distracted by it. And so I know that's kind of a big picture thing, but if I think about kind of the overall takeaway, I think I said to you at the time, I would have paid 5 times what you were asking to pay. If I knew what this was going to bring me for the rest of my life, I thought I was going to have to be on diets forever. And I just still to this day, can't even really believe, I'm just content and okay not being on a diet. Right. And actually feel good about not even the way my body looks, but how it's performing. Again, my work is something that's still very important to me. And so, having a body that helps my brain perform in the way I need it to has changed everything. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of bringing it more directly back to eating 5 years ago, and again, all the time before that, when I was getting in kind of depressive states and unhappy about my body, right? Like I would go to these extreme things, like I think a lot of people do. I would kind of go to the classic, like, especially around the holidays, right? Like eat a lot, eat a lot, eat a lot. Okay, I'll start over tomorrow. I'll start over Sunday. I'll start over January 1st.
Yeah.
And, even a couple of weeks ago, like I wasn't feeling great about my body. My sleep was crappy. Like I wasn't thrilled with kind of how I was performing. And I just even noticed about myself, I was like, okay, but I feel like I have the tools to reset the way I need to reset, right? Like I'll spend a couple of nights like not drinking alcohol. Like I won't eat sweets as much. I'll make sure that I'm making all of my food at home this week. And I literally for the past week, I've been doing that to kind of like reset stuff. And I feel great, right? And again, I just never imagined a life where I would be able to do that in such a thoughtful, non-extreme, and sustainable way.
And it's really interesting when I hear you talk about this stuff, because we've remained friends since the time that we work together. We catch up every now and again, and now I've been working with you, and I find it's almost like I find it hard to remember you as that person because it feels so different.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, no, like going back to kind of some of the heavier stuff, like I remember we would do our sessions at 6 a.m. before I was off to work. And, like I'd be ready for the day, and then I would be like bawling my eyes out when we were together. I would have to kind of like re-put myself together before work. And yeah, like I said, it's certainly not just about the food. I feel like, it was very iterative between like the root problem and kind of the symptom problem. And certainly I think in different pieces of life, like one is the root and one is the symptom, and then vice versa. And so I felt like, working with you was kind of a very iterative process, understanding at which point, okay, like at this point, food is the root of the problem. At this point, food is the symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
And addressing that kind of like in the right time and in the right place, and then all the stuff surrounding it as well. So I think I'd even said this to you when we were wrapping up. I had a yoga teacher many years ago who loved that phrase, like, meet you where you are. And I felt like, first of all, you were really great with that. And that played out in that way, like really understanding what role is food playing in this? And then if it's not food, like what role is the other thing playing in it? And not being afraid to tackle and work on what the other thing was, because that was going to affect all the other stuff.
Is there other, you mentioned definitely the big piece in terms of your relationship with food and your relationship with your body, or how you think about yourself, but are there any other symptoms side that you want to mention?
I think, and again, I don't want to like overstate the issues I was having, because I want to be respectful to people who are having kind of more medical issues. Like I wasn't having, again, besides like the lethargy and just kind of like not feeling great image wise and also performance wise, I wasn't having necessarily a ton of kind of tangible issues. For me, it was like just this little lifelong problem, right? Of the constant drag and distraction in my life, and just having, gosh, like you gave me a path out of that, which I literally did not think was something that would ever be true, ever be possible.
So then I guess let's bring it up to speed now. Like, how is your life different now versus when you first got in contact with me?
How is my life? Well, my life is really different, but for a lot of reasons, it's probably not too related to that. But a couple of things, again, like I just can't underscore enough. And I think it's important to say, because I just imagine there are other people and women specifically out there who feel this way at all. Like the fact that food and my body is no longer a distraction, right? Like the fact that I don't walk by a mirror and am scared to look up at it. I don't know if anybody else feels this, but like if you're taking pictures with your friends, right? Like the first thing you look at is like, do I look fat in this picture? Like the fact that those things are not thoughts and distractions in my life anymore, right? Like that is just the underlying currents that shapes every single day. Another thing is, as I gave this example before, I think the fact that I'm making food choices that I want to make, like this is not feeling forced or that I'm sticking to a plan or a program or anything. Like I'm making food choices I want to make because I have a direct understanding now of how they're going to impact my body and my brain and my distraction level and make me feel, and I'm making these choices of my free will that just like feel good to make. And I understand how they're going to make me physically and mentally feel, I think is, again, just something I never imagined would be true of me either. And I guess lastly, kind of following up on that, that I know like the levers kind of in diet, physical activity, certainly sleep, coming back to that are going to help me like dial my performance up or down, right? And so the fact that I'm making like very intentional choices of I don't want to have a glass of wine tonight because I need great sleep tonight because I have a big day at work tomorrow, like I actually have physical control over those things that are going to give me the outcome in my body and my brain that I want. Again, to someone like you, this probably sounds so obvious, but I spent 25 years without that. And so to have control back over that and have it reap benefit and reward and connection with people is meaningful to say the least, right? But I actually have the power to like control how I feel and to feel the way I want to feel in my day, in my life now. And, these are just like the fundamentals that I need to be able to do that for the rest of my life.
And I know, I asked about how life is different now than it was before. And I know that you fairly recently in the last year or 18 months have now set up your own business, whereas before you were working for other people. Do you think that that's something that you would have been able to do previously, or the level of distraction with all of this stuff would have impeded that?
That's a great question. Would I have been able to like set up the business and kind of do the semantics of that? Yes. Would I have been able to like dig in the intense kind of work I do, keep the focus that I want, like forge the relationships that I want, that ultimately is going to make this business successful? With those distractions, no, I would not be able to do it to the same level and standard. Absolutely not.
Okay. And so the final thing I just want to find out, like if someone was thinking about getting help with their health, and whether that be physical health or mental, emotional health, so the different things that we've chatted about today, like what would your advice be to them?
Do it. My advice is like, if someone is even thinking about it, right? Like it's present enough, it's on their mind enough that it's a distraction in some way, right? And yeah. I'm personally a big believer in outsourcing help. And so, yeah, first of all, like we don't know what we don't know. And second of all, I just think that the level of accountability, taking things that are kind of like bottled up inside of you and putting them outside of you, getting an objective, non-judgmental opinion and help. Like if you're someone who has been feeling this way and distracted in this way at all, and like you're hearing this today, right? It's probably some kind of sign of a trigger, like, okay, like there is help out there. Maybe I should take a move on this. So yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, getting the help is a no-brainer.
Okay. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today, Julie. It's just lovely chatting with you again.
Same. Thanks, Chris.
So I hope you got something out of that conversation. I hope that maybe it demonstrated the many areas I work on with clients, and also that long-term changes are achievable. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm now taking on clients. If you're interested in working together or simply finding out more about what that would look like, you can head over to www.7-health.com/help. And that is it for this week's show. I will be back next week with another new episode. Enjoy your week, and I will catch you then.
Thanks for listening to Real Health Radio. If you are interested in more details, you can find them at the 7 Health website. That's www.7-health.com.